I have a long experience of treating this cervical myelopathy, and you always wonder if something more can be done for these cases because we know the surgery works in these cases, but then what is if there's something beyond surgery?
This is Myelopathy Matters.
Hello, welcome to Myelopathy Matters, the official podcast of the charity Myelopathy.org. I'm Ben Davies, a scientist, surgeon, and a founder of Myelopathy.org, and as always joined by my colleague Ewan Sadler, person living with DCM and also a founder of Myelopathy.org. How are you, Ewan?
Yeah, I'm good, Ben. I've got some new myelopathy symptoms playing up, but glad to see the warmer weather has finally arrived. It's been a long time coming, even longer when you live in Wales.
I can imagine.
On the flip side, it's great to see our work at Myelopathy.org come to fruition and reach out to more parts of the world. And I'm really interested to hear the research in India and this drug, Cerebrolysin. Well, it wasn't too bad.
Spot on, that is exactly correct. So that really is the focus of today's podcast episode with our guest, Dr. Ayush Sharma. He's the head of spine surgery at Ambedkar Central Railway Hospital in India. And he's been leading a series of trials to evaluate whether this drug, Cerebrolysin, could enhance recovery after surgery in DCM. And I started by asking him how he became interested in that question.
I have a long experience of treating this cervical myelopathy, and you always wonder if something more can be done for these cases because we know the surgery works in these cases, but then if there's something beyond surgery and where you can help them because we know neurology surgery is just a decompression. What you do is you decompress the cord, but if there was anything which could help the cord to recover better or faster, that was the whole idea of searching for something which might help these patients. So we are looking through the literature and we came across this drug which is called Cerebrolysin, which is basically neuropeptide drug because it contains 85% free amino acids and then it has 15% biologically active low molecular weight peptide, which is supposed to have a neurotropic effect and also contributes to neuroprotective and neurodegenerative actions. So we were very curious to see, and there was already a published paper on the conservatively treated patients of myelopathy, where the authors sort of concluded that it does help in these cases. So we sort of, the idea came to us, what if we combine it with surgery and see what happens in these patients? So that is how we started this working with Cerebrolysin.
And perhaps you could go a little bit into a bit more detail because it's as a sort of drug. I mean, it's quite interesting how it's produced, isn't it? Because it comes from, my understanding is a sort of purification of pig brain. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. What we know is Cerebrolysin is it works on various principles, and but then the exact principle which it works is still not very correct and not still we are trying to find it out. But it has like as I told you, a neuroprotective function, and somewhere in the line we believe that it works on the brain because it is a certified drug for stroke, and that is where the idea of using it in patient of myelopathy came from. If you really want to see how it really works, it is very, very difficult because even the jury is still out there. It is we know, for example, paracetamol. Till now we don't know how it works, and there's a lot of mechanisms where how it works, but no one has been able to really pinpoint how the drug works. Similarly, there are a lot of proposed mechanisms. If you go to the literature, there are a lot of proposed mechanisms for how this specific drug works, but there's enough data from research in stroke, from other brain injury, which supports that it does have a role when it comes to, sort of helping the brain or the spine cord to regenerate. And that is where the idea comes from.
Yeah, I sort of follow. I mean, when I was digging into it in advance of talking to you, I was trying to get a sense of the mechanism. It clearly is not fully defined. And one of the things that occurred to me is that essentially what you're essentially providing here are the sort of nutrients and the growth factors that are present in our nervous system, in a healthy nervous system. And it sort of sparked the idea to me that some of the sort of ongoing work, particularly from a chap called Ari Nuri in Switzerland, is that there is probably quite a large nutritional deficit in people presenting for surgery with myelopathy. And whether or not we're simply here boosting, giving them a sort of nutritional shot to try and help them recover, because surgery takes the mechanism of injury away, and then you have this sort of plastic response in the spinal cord, and that maybe we've got here a very sophisticated nutritional supplement.
Maybe there's no way to prove or disprove it, because if you see, there are a lot of mechanisms which has been proposed how this drug exactly works. But as long as it works, I think I will take it. That is my call on this drug.
No, I follow. I believe there's some indications, aren't there? Stroke, you mentioned. People have been looking at other conditions like traumatic brain injury, but it's not been widely adopted. It's certain countries have licensed it for sure. And is India one of those? How did you manage to get this into a study in India?
Yeah. So basically, it is licensed. It is a licensed product in India, but it has not been widely used for myelopathy. It is very widely used for stroke and for traumatic injury. It is in my country. So it was already a licensed product. Only thing we chose is it to be used in an indication which was not earlier thought of, because there is still, I think ours is the third paper in the series of use of cerebrolysin for cervical myelopathy.
I'm with you. So how did you go about getting that study off the ground then? What were the sort of procedures or permissions that you needed to be able to use that?
So anything which you do new, it does comes with some sort of a challenge. So we do have the hospital ethical committee which needs to clear a research like this. There was a precedence to do it because we already had a paper, as I spoke earlier, where they have studied this drug in conservatively treated cases of myelopathy, and the authors, they concluded that it worked. So we sort of proposed this study to our committee, and what they suggested is to do a pilot study just to see with a small number of patients, so that we can at least find out if it really has any role, and especially to look at any adverse reaction. So this study which we are talking about right now is the second series. We did a pilot study first, where we sort of concluded that it was very, very safe to be used, and we felt that it does work in myelopathy. And this is the second part of the study where we sort of did the randomized control, and we sort of divided the patient into two groups and tried to find out what was the effect of cerebrolysin when
Well,
given
let's talk
in
about that.
patients.
Let's
Yeah.
talk about that study
Yeah.
now, because that's really what we want to hear more about. So perhaps you could talk us through what that study looked like, and we can come on to the findings.
So basically, the idea was to see the effect of cerebrolysin in cases where in patients where we have operated for myelopathy. So earlier study we did with 21-day drug regime, because the recommendation from the index study was for 21 days. But the problem was it was very, very difficult to give the patients a drug for 21 days, because this drug specifically is a IV administered drug. So compliance was a big issue. So in this study, what we did is we divided the patients into two groups, and which were of course randomly assigned. But we knew that the drug works. So the group where the drug was used was slightly like it was out of 90, we gave 60 patients we gave cerebrolysin, and 30 patients were put on placebo. And then what we did is, as per the recommendation, we gave 5 ml of cerebrolysin, which was diluted in normal saline 100 ml for 10 days. So instead of giving it for 21 days, which was the earlier regime which was used, we used 10-day regime, and we tried out to see if there was any difference in the result between the two groups.
And what was the sort of appetite from the participants, the patients? Were they happy to receive cerebrolysin? Obviously understanding it's come from pig brains, etc. Was there any cultural issues with that?
So in India, there are a lot of vegetarians, if you understand. So a lot of them, they won't eat any meat product. But when it comes to drug, most of the patients will accept even if the drug comes from a meat product, because that is the acceptability of a drug. So as such, we did, of course, because we are doing a research. During consent we did explain them the origin of the drug and everything. But in spite of being coming from the pig brain, we didn't find that we didn't have refusal just because there was a problem with the origin of the drug.
Mm-hmm. And how do you set up to measure success? What were your sort of measurements? What were you looking for to see?
Okay. So basically, what we did is we tried to evaluate the patient between pre-operative and post-operative period after the drug was given. So the parameters that were used specifically was the MGO score, which is a modified Japanese orthopedic score, to look for the improvement in the signs of myelopathy. We also specifically looked at a hand function as a separate parameter because we believe the hand function is very, very important for any patient. If your hand functions better, then most of the patients they really appreciate that point. So we took it as a separate entity. We also looked at the VAS scores. We also looked at the neurological recovery in terms of Asia grading. So these are the scores which we compared preoperatively and postoperatively once the patient was given the drug. And of course, we had a group where we use a placebo. So we compared the two groups, and that is where we sort of tried to analyze if the drug had any effect on these patients when it came to recovery of the symptoms.
So in summary, they're good breadth of sort of function, hand, limb, and also pain scores in terms of your assessment there. One of the things
Yeah,
that strikes
exactly.
me, being quite familiar with building studies now in myelopathy, is we know that those scores are quite difficult to detect additional benefit on from surgery, and your sample size is relatively small by the scale of other trials. How did you select that sort of patient group of 90? And do you think that was enough for this study?
So we are now coming up with a bigger trial. Okay. So this is not the final study, if I can say, because still when we went from 21 to 10 data regime, we were not sure if it was really if the drug will really have effect. So this study is again is part two of the pilot project. We were trying to find out if the 10-day drug regime, which we felt which is good enough for us to do a bigger trial, will have any effect. So this is again what I can tell you is the part two of our pilot project. Now we are in the third stage where we will be using it on a much larger population, and we believe that is where the real data will come from. But as of now, what we got, I think it was very, very interesting.
Well, let's hear that. What were the findings of this part two study then?
So basically, based on our study, we concluded few things. We saw that the neurological improvement was better in the group where we used Cerebrolysin compared to the group where placebo was given, and specifically the hand function because NJ score, as you know, anyone who does research with myelopathy, is very very difficult sometimes to really pick up the benefits, and that is one of the flaws of the NJ score. But so that's why we looked at an independent variable, which was the hand function. So even we found out that the hand function in the group which we used the drug that was better. So we thought that based on that, we concluded that this drug seems to have some effect when it comes to improving the symptoms of patients of cervical myelopathy.
Fantastic. And I think you picked up on this already, but ultimately you also saw this was a safe thing and well tolerated.
Exactly. The first study was basically a safety study. The second study was to validate the course of the drug, if it has any effect, and then of course to again validate the safety of the drug.
Mm-hmm. And how big a difference in improvement was that? Was that something that was really meaningful, do you think?
So as a researcher, meaning comes to you when you see the numbers. As a surgeon, meaning comes to me when I see the patient improvement. If you ask me as a researcher, we have seen the statistics is on the positive side, but as a surgeon, if you ask me, I believe it has a meaning to these patients, and that's why now we have adapted it as a standard regime for all our patients who undergo surgery for cervical myelopathy, and that will be $1 million question if we can find a difference in terms of statistics in the improvement when we do the large series which we are presently working with.
So let's talk a little bit about that then. So you've got another study running now, and what does that
Exactly.
study look like?
So basically that now, because we sort of have reached a place where we know that 10-day drug regime works, we know if this drug is safe, we know there are trends based on whatever we have done that it sort of works in these patients. So now, as a standard protocol, all the patients of cervical myelopathy which undergo surgery, they are given this the same protocol, 10-day duration of injection cerebrolysin, and we will sort of divided our patients pre-cerebrolysin group and post-cerebrolysin group. All the patients will be divided into that group, and we will, because it will be like a prospective
Crossover.
prospective study, and with a at least 2 years minimum follow-up, and we will try to find out if the two groups have any difference in terms of the parameters like VAS score, the MGO score, hand function, and even we are looking at some of the MRI signals pre-op and post-op 1 year follow-up if they can show us some improvement or some difference.
So let me just make sure I've heard that right. So essentially, you're setting up now a final evaluation. I guess we call it a phase 3 study, and essentially you've got a pre-intervention group and then post-intervention. So you're looking at a sort of crossover type design in terms of how you're going to evaluate this now.
Exactly.
Uh-huh. And how many people are you expecting to enroll in this bigger study now?
So we do have the data from the first two study. So now we have a very good enrollment, and because you can just put the results and let them choose. But as of now, I think 90 to 95% of our patients who are scheduled for surgery for cervical myelopathy are enrolled for the phase 3 trial.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating. And what's a slightly different question here, Ayush? I guess one of the questions that comes up often with sort of drug studies, particularly novel drugs, is and devices indeed in surgery. What's been the relationship with the pharmaceutical company in terms of putting this together? Because there's always that concern of conflicts of interest, etc. What has the relationship been here in terms of with the manufacturer and your studies?
So there is no financial or any contribution from the manufacturer. So study is completely independent of the manufacturer. Except for that, of course, the drug has been provided, but that drug has not been provided by the manufacturer at any for the study or anything. It is just have been bought from the market like any other drug. So basically, this group of patients or the study design has nothing to do with direct or indirect support from the industry.
Fantastic. And have you been able to expand this study beyond your center? Is this something that's been able to use other centers in India, or have you just restricted it to your service?
So once we published the second data, there was a lot of interest in the study and in the drug. So now I know for sure there are two other centers who are using the drug. Okay, but I don't know if they are also trying to look at the results in terms of any data or statistics. But it will be very interesting to see what they conclude, because one center doing something like this and telling it doesn't make a lot of difference. It has to be other surgeons. It has to be the effect of this drug has to be independently verified. I think that is the time we can really say if this really works.
Yeah, and I really stand behind that. I think there's always that scrutiny and that sort of hangover of doubt from the outsider, and they have to see that it's been done in exactly the right way. Otherwise, there'll be potential criticism, I suppose.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that.
What a great and interesting interview. Can't say my taste buds jumped with joy when he mentioned it was purified pig's brains. But saying that, it's great they are looking at medications to help people regain some of the function that has been lost due to DCM. So it all sounds really promising. So what's your perspective then, Ben?
Well, there are a number of emotions, really. I think there's excitement, admiration, but also caution. Let's start with the admiration. It really cannot be underestimated how difficult it is to get research in DCM off the ground, let alone prospective randomized controlled trials of drugs. I'm only aware of a handful of drug studies that have ever been conducted in DCM. Yet here we have Dr. Sharma, who's identified a critical unmet need, a potential unexplored solution, and let's face it, in a resource-limited environment, managed to progress through a very structured scientific inquiry. And that is really impressive. So this really then feeds into the excitement, because what he's demonstrated is that here is something safe, well tolerated, patients are buying into it, and there are some suggestions that maybe there are some benefits. But then comes the caution. I think this is important because we're still not sure how this drug, Cerebrolysin, really works. And more importantly, if this works. When you design an effectiveness study, you need to really prove two things. One, that those getting the drug do better, and that difference is not simply down to chance. And the second thing is that any difference that you see is actually a meaningful difference. The amount gained is actually something that people can really identify with having changed. Now, the study that Dr. Sharma has just completed wasn't really designed to consider effectiveness. Bottom line, there weren't enough people in the study to do that. His aim at that stage was really to consider whether it was safe and look at the dosing of the drug. He's now going on to look at effectiveness. So that means there's still lots of uncertainty here, although there is some promise.
And I was interested by the nutrition concept you put forward, Ben. What is your thinking there?
Well, it's really only an idea, to be honest, but it starts from what we think is going on and some of the increasing evidence. So if you think about DCM, yes, there is a mechanical injury process, but it seems that two people can have the very same injury, but very different results from that. So what we're starting to think is occurring is that everyone actually has a different ability to tolerate that injury, and that difference can change over time. And one of the things that may influence that is nutrition. So, for example, if you don't have the right building blocks to repair your nervous system in the wake of a chronic repeated injury, then eventually that injury will overwhelm the repair processes. And this has had some preliminary work done actually by Ari and Nuria from Geneva in a number of studies looking at sort of surrogates of how nutritionally replete somebody is and their recovery and response to the disease. So, for example, what they found is that people who had anemia, i.e. they had a low blood count because they didn't have the right nutrients to make their blood cells, they actually seemed to perform worse in terms of their response to surgery. And he's actually looking at B12 supplements, for example. So I think together it suggests that, there is perhaps in people undergoing surgery for myelopathy a deficiency in the real ingredients that they need to repair the central nervous system. And it's very possible that some of those ingredients are in Cerebrolysin and may be contributing to some benefits. But it's all an idea, really, and the proof will be in more scientific inquiry.
That's great. I'm looking forward to that too. But I do echo your sense of admiration, Ben. As someone who struggles so much with myelopathy, to have anyone take an interest in DCM is really inspiring.
It really is. And of course, that's one of the reasons we formed Myelopathy.org, education, support, but also research. And really want to make sure that innovation anywhere can help people everywhere. And that starts by giving people like Dr. Ayush Sharma, hopefully helping hand, raise the profile of what he's trying to achieve and keeping a close eye on the results.
So what's up next month, Ben?
Well, next month, it's a big one. We are turning our attention to disc replacement for myelopathy. And it's a big one because it doesn't seem to be a single viewpoint. We've gone out and spoken to a lot of people, professionals, scientists, and people with DCM. So plenty to digest and think about as we get to the bottom of if and when and how we should have a disc replacement in myelopathy. So thanks very much to Ayush Sharma for joining us. This was Myelopathy Matters from Myelopathy.org. The podcast was produced by Carl Homer from Cambridge TV. To keep up to date with the latest in the field of degenerative cervical myelopathy, you can subscribe to our podcast on your favourite app or stay tuned to the website, myelopathy.org. But if you've got a question about myelopathy or an experience to share, we'd love to hear it. Please do get in touch at ben@myelopathy.org. Until next time, goodbye.